Well, hello everyone. Welcome again to our third episode this month of August is National Make a Will Month, a discussion of estate planning and wills. We have myself here in Pensacola, Florida, and we have Sandy B. Law located in South Florida. If you're watching live, give us a hashtag live and tell us where you're from. If you're watching on the replay, give us a hashtag replay and tell us where you're from. I have with me today and have had for the last couple of years. This is our third annual event of this sort. But I have Sandy B. Law, my friend, my sister, who is an educator and a lawyer, attorney in the estate planning world, the probate world, and a little real estate. And she's very knowledgeable, very humble, very powerful. She's quietly powerful and really helps us and helps educate us. And I've always enjoyed having these sessions with her. So I'm going to turn it over to her and we're going to get started. Let's do it tonight, Sandy.
This is night 3 of 4, so I'm going to try my best to be nice and hype and share as much information as we possibly can. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for another part of our series for National Make a Will Month. All month long in the month of August, we want you to be thinking about how you can make a will as soon as you possibly can. And we're also kind of diving into some different frequently asked questions, some misconceptions, some myths, all of the things that you should be considering as you think about making a will here during National Make a Will Month. So I'm looking forward to yet another great conversation. Just to recap, we spent the first two parts of this webinar series talking a little bit about a few things. One was dealing with real estate when it comes to your estate, right? What
Right.
do we do to protect our real estate? What are some things that we need to consider? And we even talked about some questions that people typically ask. And then we started talking a bit about some of these special populations that we need to be concerned about in our lives, whether they be children or adults with special needs, whether they be aging parents who might have additional needs as they age, whether they be other individuals in our family that we may end up being responsible for. I know I've told you guys a story about becoming responsible for one of my aunts as she passed away suddenly. And basically, I had to kind of figure a lot of things out. And that's part of the reason that I do this type of educational series with our chief encouragement officer here, Troy Holt. I want people to know about some of the things that can go wrong when you don't have a will. So that's why the series is titled, What Happens If You Don't Have a Will? So I'm going to hand it back to you, Troy. Thank you so much for being our gracious host and fielding so many questions. So here we go.
Sandy, again, I want to say thank you for doing this. This is our third annual. And this is very important because I think statistics shows us, if I'm not mistaken, about 40% of people have a will. And what people don't understand is, I've said this before, and you got two choices. Most people do not want the government in their business. And they get upset when the government get involved, whether it's personal or business. But what people don't realize, if we pass without a will, which is just instructions, that means that the government will dictate to us our assets and what we want to leave. So Sandy, let's talk about that a little bit. Why it's important for people to have this. Now, first of all, before Sandy go, if you're watching live, give us a hashtag live and tell us where you're from. If you're watching on the replay, give us a hashtag and tell us where you're from. Disclaimer, Sandy is not practicing law. She is not your attorney. This is for educational purposes only. I am not an attorney. I'm a certified financial educator, licensed life, health, and annuity agent, licensed in 28 states. And so I come across with people who do have some legal questions, and I can refer them to Sandy and some other legal services that I have. So neither one of us are practicing law. We just want to share information and educate. Sandy, go back to you.
Absolute. So I'm definitely not your attorney. I am an attorney, right? I'm an attorney, but I am not your attorney. So please make sure that you seek out some legal guidance in your area. Also, even though I'm an attorney, I'm licensed to practice in Florida. So I'm only going to address things in a more general sense to make sure that we're covering, folks across the country who may have questions about this topic. So, please be mindful of the information that we're giving you. You need to, see someone in your area to make sure that you're getting the information that applies in your zone. Okay. All right. So, I figured tonight we might talk a little bit about some frequently asked questions. And, I want to ask you, Troy, what would you say is the most frequent question that you get asked when it comes to this type of area, whether it be wills, trust, estate planning, looking to the future, financial management? Like, what's the question that always comes about?
I think a lot of questions that I get is beneficiaries from this standpoint. A lot of people say, well, can I leave my child as a beneficiary,
Right.
and minor child as a beneficiary? And I think the other question is, why do I need a will? Those
All
are
right.
the two questions that I think I get most often.
All right. So I'll start with the why do I need a will? Many times people don't realize the importance of a will until they have to experience the probate court process. So that's when often people are like, man, I didn't realize I would have to go through this or that or the third. And so the importance of having a will is being able to express your intentions so that in the event of your passing, folks are not left to question and wonder and figure out for you what your intentions were, but instead, folks will have a document that they can look to that gives them instructions. And that's actually what a will does. It gives instructions. It gives instructions to your family. It gives instructions to the court, to the attorneys who are handling your file. All of those instructions are intended to serve as your last wishes. And so, one important reason to have a will is so that you can have a say in what happens to everything that you own, as well as who in your family or who in your friend circle is to receive what you own. Sometimes people have very specific wishes about what they want to happen, whether it be to real estate, whether it be to vehicles, artwork, jewelry, any kind of personal effects, furniture. They may have specific people that they want those things to go to. But if you don't leave a will to provide those instructions, then no one knows. Everyone's going to just assume, and many of your things might get given, might be given away to people that you may not have wanted them to go to. Many of your things will probably end up in the hands of people that maybe you never in a million years would have done, right? So you want to make sure that you have some instructions in place for those that are going to come after your passing to handle your final affairs. What was your other question?
Beneficiaries. But before you go there, my my question is, does everybody go through probate, and how can people avoid probate?
So that answer depends on what it is that we're dealing with in terms of assets. There's not really one answer to that aside from saying it's very possible that you may go through probate even with a will. Um, One thing that's important to note is this: the probate court process is intended to make sure that whatever personal effects, whatever financials, whatever real property or other types of property were in your name on the date of your death go to the people that you either intended through a will to transfer those assets to, or that the state law says are the next people to receive your assets. So those are the things that you have to consider. That is what the will serves as, in terms of instructions to the court for probate. But if there is no will, the probate court is going to follow the state law and make sure that everything that you have is going to go to the right people. Now, why does the probate court process happen? It often happens because there are things that need to be transferred that can't be transferred the way that they are sitting currently, right? So I'll think of real estate, for example. If I leave my property, all the property that I own, to my children, and that property includes something like real estate, well, real estate has a title. And if I pass away, my name is still on the title of that real estate. So we need a court order to say, we're accepting this will. This will has been proven to the probate court as the last wishes of this person. And this particular asset, let's say the real estate, should be transferred to this particular person or persons who are listed in this will. Okay, so then you have an official document that can be recorded on the public records, specifically the property records, and now you'll be able to have a clean transfer of the title from one person to the other, because now you'll have an official court order that says this property that was owned by this person is now going to this person, according to this will or according to the state law. So that's generally what would happen. Why do we need to go through it? Because it is set up to transfer assets. If you don't have anything that has a title, and we're just talking, let's say, personal effects, and you have a will, then those personal effects will be transferred to whoever the will says they are to go to.
Right.
If you don't have a will and there's a battle over personal effects, then you may end up in the probate court process where people are going to be fighting over the sofa and the butter containers and the, whatever, right? So probate is intended to serve a purpose of transferring, creating an opportunity for things to be transferred, in the event that there's a will, in the event that there is no will, in the event that there's a conflict. So it serves a couple of different purposes.
Sandy, I'm trying to figure out how to put this. What is the most absurd thing that you have seen a fight over in probate?
I've seen a lot of absurd things. One of the things that I hate the most in the probate court process is battles over real estate. Oftentimes there is one, let's say it's a case where there's multiple siblings, as an example. I've seen multiple times. Multiple siblings, there's one piece of property. All of the siblings are to receive this property. Only one sibling is even remotely making an effort to maintain the property, to get the grass mowed, to pay the electricity, to keep up the property as a whole, to pay the mortgage, all of that. And then you'll have other siblings who don't care to provide any contribution, don't have the means to provide any contribution, but create some conflict in the process, right? Sometimes you'll have a sibling that'll be like, oh, I'm supposed to get the house. Okay, the house has a mortgage. Can you pay it? Oh, no, I don't have any money to pay the mortgage. Okay, so how do you expect to keep a house? Right? Or, mama said I was going to get the house. Okay, but mama left a will that says you're not getting the house.
Right.
So why are you contesting the will when you very well know that mom left the will?
Yeah.
Then you go through all this ups, downs, twists, and turns. And it's just like so much court process. And in the middle of all of this is people paying attorneys.
Right. Yeah.
That's why there's always money in the legal system, because people will always put up a fight. And sometimes the fight is not even worth what exists.
Yeah.
There's not even any money to come from this fight. So, it's just a lot of layers of issues and things. And so I think the worst thing about going through the probate court process and dealing with multiple parties is, it's a fight, but the only person winning is the attorneys.
Yeah. Right.
The family members aren't winning. You're spending money, spending money, spending money. And sometimes it could have been prevented. I always tell my clients, if you're going to leave property, leave it to one person. Just one. I've had several instances where family members, let's say mom wants to leave the property to one of the kids.
Hmm.
That's not a bad thing, because if
Hmm.
your other kids already have a property, for example, or they're already settled in their lives, then give it to the one that doesn't have anything, right?
Hmm.
Now I know that sounds a little controversial, because it's like, oh, well, everyone should get something, but you can't divide up a property
Right. Yeah.
unless you have a duplex or a
Yeah.
multiplex.
Yeah.
One piece of property is one piece of property.
Yeah.
So if in reality you want the children to benefit from the property, then maybe you want to set it up so that the property can be sold, and then
Hmm.
you take the funds from the sale and put something aside for each person. Or, if you're going to leave property to multiple people, maybe potentially you could put the property into a trust.
Hmm.
And then basically, upon your passing, you could say, well, if all of the parties are not in agreement, then you can maybe have some provision that says, the property will be sold, money will come into the trust, and certain amounts will go to each person, right? Because there's no way in the world that four people who may not be on the same page will be able to manage a property. You're going to have a battle. You're going to have one person trying to deal with everything. And eventually that one person is going to be like, well, forget this. I'm
Yeah.
not doing this. If they don't want to contribute, if my other siblings don't want to contribute, what am I doing that for? So I think it's just important to know that we have to have some consideration when we are leaving things for the next generation or for our family, because, just because everybody's kind and sweet and everybody
Hmm.
gets along right now, it's not the same. Once
Yeah.
money is in the picture, now everybody has something to say.
Yeah. That's true.
So,
I want to say, I still think we have an issue with Facebook. So I think it's still the recording, the live is still only we can see it. So I still think we have
okay.
an issue.
I
But
see it. So I just posted it on Facebook as just a link.
okay,
I posted a link of the live. Um, I don't know why Facebook is playing.
yeah,
Like, come on, Facebook.
I know, right? But I'm going to say something, and then you kind of. I was going to ask a question. If you had a magic wand and you could make the rules and the law, then for you, if it was a family like that, it would be one person gets the property. It could be the one most responsible or the one that doesn't have the property, whatever the case may be. That would be your, I guess, wisdom or guidance of because of what you've seen, the experiences you've seen when you have multiple people and they never can get on
Yeah.
one accord.
I think parents in particular who want to leave something for their children
Hmm.
need to consider that not all of their children will be on the same page. There are many instances where you have a super loving family and everything is great and everybody gets along, but then once mom or dad passes away or both, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I think I should get this. I'm the one that was always spending money on mom and dad. Oh,
Yeah,
no, well, I don't see why you should get this. It's supposed to be divided up by all of us. Oh,
yeah,
well, I don't think I should have to pay for AB. It doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
And it happens more often than I would like. And I
Okay.
can't count how many times I've had a family come to me and they're like, oh, well, because I always ask the question, I say, is everybody on the same page?
Page.
And
Yeah.
the answer I get every time, Troy? Absolutely. We all get along, blah, blah, blah. As
Hmm.
soon as I file the paperwork,
Hmm.
guess what happens? Somebody's looking at the document and they're like, oh, well, the property is worth this much. Oh, well, I think the property should be sold.
Yeah.
Well, you all came to me and everybody was like, we're on the same page. Just transfer the property to all of us. Oh,
Right.
I don't want my name on this property with my siblings.
Right.
This one has bad credit. This one has this one. And I'm just like, I don't think people realize how detrimental it can be to have multiple people on a property. I really wish people would consider other means of leaving property. A trust is a great tool,
Hmm.
but not everybody, a trust is not for everybody. So I'm
Right.
not really a proponent for saying, oh, just put it in a trust.
Yeah.
Well, a trust is a bit more of an expensive, tool to use. And
Hmm.
also sometimes I think about, well, what is it that you're trying to accomplish, right? Are you trying to make sure that every child gets a fair share of the property? Well, then maybe, yeah, that might be a beneficial thing. Are you just trying to transfer the property outright to your kids? That's not necessarily the easiest way to do so then. So I think that has to be considered.
Now, I don't know if I told you this, but I have an associate's degree in legal assistant or paralegal.
I didn't know that. You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, I thought I did. Yeah, and so I have a fascination about the law, and and saying that I wanted probate, but the the electives core or the emphasis probate was rare, so I ended up having to go real estate because I would have to wait a couple of years to get the probate, but I wanted probate,
Okay.
and I
Oh,
remember
wow.
the attorney taught one of the classes. Can't remember. I think it was real estate. Can't remember exactly what the class. And one thing he taught that still sticks with me today. He said he's always advised his clients when they purchasing a property and they have to evict someone. His recommendation is pay them to leave. He said because he said about time you go to court, get everything you spent more money and all the time. It's more
Yes.
a frustration and headache. And he said,
Yeah.
I would advise people you be better off just paying them to leave. You'll save money, save time, save a headache. Now, I said all that to say this: you giving some advice, and he said most of them, 99% of them, never listen. Okay,
Yeah.
same way with you. You'll say, "Hey, I recommend you pick one because of this," and then people you have, and then when something happened, everybody said it together, and then it never works out. It becomes issue. Am I
Right.
correct?
I would say the same thing. I think a lot of times, we don't think about what's going to happen next. And
Mhm,
so when someone passes, we're like, we think everybody's going to be like, oh, well, your mom just passed or your dad just passed.
mhm.
Oh, yeah, we'll move out and we'll do this, that, and the third. No. If
Yeah,
anything, they're like, oh, mom just passed. That means I don't have to pay rent for a little bit. That means, I can sit around, nobody can kick me out yet because none
right.
of them have, ownership of the property,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So once folks know that the owner has passed, sometimes it creates a lot of abuses. And, you know, I I have notoriously had challenging cases.
Mhm,
Most of my cases have not been simple, straightforward. And I've seen all kinds of trash happen and I've seen people completely destroy homes
mhm,
after being told to leave.
mhm.
Even after being given ample time to kind of get their stuff together and find another place. I've seen folks beg, these tenants to go and say, hey, how much do you want? I'll give you some money to find a new place. And people just want to be vengeful
Yeah,
and they'll drag you through court process with no care in the world because they know that they're going to get extra time, extra time, extra time, extra time. By the time they finish getting all their extra time, your bill to your attorney is sky high.
mhm.
You're still paying mortgage, you're doing all this stuff while you're trying to sell the property. And buyers are not going to buy unless you make sure that these tenants are out.
Yeah,
So sometimes you'll find yourself in a predicament where you can't sell a property because the buyer's looking at you like, until you get this person out, we're not going. Like, we're not going to sign this contract. You need to get this person out first.
and it sounds like you said something, and I don't know if you paid attention what you said. You said you tend to get the complex cases, they're not simple cases. When you first
Just
got,
a bit.
yeah, when you first got into the legal, was it dumbfounded to you because you was thinking, this case is these cases gonna be easy, and it end up being complex. Now I know complex. It mean it gave you experience, it gave you some knowledge.
Yeah.
But were you one, that you was like, man, why I keep getting these complex?
I was actually working for someone early on in my practice life, and they were like, "Why do we keep getting these crazy cases?" I was like, "It's me. It's me. I'm bringing the crazy cases. Maybe
Right,
the Lord wants me to learn
yeah,
through
right,
the hard way how to deal with the challenges."
yeah,
But one thing that dumbfounded me was the folks who come to you, wanting assistance for, somebody passed, and they don't realize how long the court process can really take. because folks don't realize that we don't just file documents and they get approved and we're done.
Gotcha.
There's a whole system at play. Oftentimes we're filing documents, we have to do these checklists. Oftentimes things are rejected and we have to resubmit. Oftentimes there's windows of time that we have to wait, like creditors periods and things like that. So there's much more to the process than just filing a paper and getting it signed. And the other thing is, when we have other parties involved, we have to serve those other parties. We have to
Okay.
provide them with notice of what's going on in the court process. So something that could take, a couple of weeks or a couple of months could take 6 months to a year if we're having challenges with people contesting what's
Mhm,
going on.
mhm,
If we have folks that won't sign
mhm,
documents that we need in order to proceed with a portion of the case. If we have folks that don't agree and go and get their own attorney and they're objecting to the whole case.
mhm,
If we have, like we mentioned, these tenants that won't go away and they're slowing down a portion of the case. Sometimes it's just getting things kicked back by the court. And, the judge may ask for some extra thing or some clarification, or the judge may want you to set something for hearing. And sometimes the hearing, I'm looking for a hearing right now. Sometimes that hearing is a few months down the line.
yeah.
So, there's a lot of things that come into the process. And I've had some really patient clients. I've also had some clients that would just go buck wild and then they go and get another attorney. And then it's so funny, they'll go get another attorney and the process still continues. So it's just
Right.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I would encourage folks to understand that patience is needed. I know that we're in the age where we can just pick up our phone and we click and we click and we can just get everything instantaneously.
Mhm.
But sometimes it does take quite a bit of time, and it's more than we would anticipate. So, I think folks need to go into these processes knowing patience is needed,
Mhm.
understanding is needed, and be mindful if you have family members that are kind of interfering with the court process. That also can create some problems. So you just want to be prepared. Come with patience.
So even if the court system had double staff and have everything, there are some things that just beyond your control. Family members, other people that could delay the process, and so don't expect it to be a speedy process. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I would say generally, yeah. Now, there are certain situations where it may be speedy because we're only dealing with something like maybe an account or something like that. But
Mhm,
again, if it's one person, that's one thing. If we have to rely on other people to respond or to be served or to sign waivers or consents, those things can create delays, and those delays can be ages, right? Like,
mhm.
I've seen things go a few years because of issues, and, sometimes people file other cases outside of the probate case. So they have to, that case has to be resolved before the probate can do anything, because maybe there's, let's say, a foreclosure on a property. Let's say somebody has, filed some other lawsuit for maybe personal injury or other damages. Let's say the person that passed owed a lot of people and one of the creditors is suing, right? So there may be some other things that are accessory to the main probate case. Those are also things that can interfere with the process. And then sometimes too, finding assets. If you have somebody that really didn't talk to other family members and now the family has to figure out what they had, did they have life insurance? Did they have bank accounts? Did they have vehicles? What did they have? If we have to do a search,
Mhm.
that's more time on top, right? If there's no trace of what they did, let's say they did everything online and nobody has the password to their computer, that could be an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of little things that we need to consider in our process.
So this gonna, and I know we're not gonna have the time, but what are some steps you would recommend the people to do where they won't have the issues which you just said, the searching for documents and searching for policies and all this? What are some things that you would recommend some people set up now?
I mean, I would say one of the most important things that I would tell people to do is to make sure that they have an inventory of everything that they own, everything they have an interest in, everything that could be a potential asset for them. Create an inventory. And that means identifying, usernames and passwords and websites where, certain assets are available, bank account information and login information, any life insurance, any investments, any crypto, any 401k, IRA, any businesses that are owned, passwords for, debit cards and credit cards and all those things. Like having a source where people can find your information, especially the people that you trust to handle your final affairs. That I think is probably the most important thing that you can do, organizing your information so that the folks that have to handle your final affairs have something that they can look to. And that way you don't have to have a deep search going on across the country trying to figure out what you owned.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember when my mother passed. And my mother did say, she told me and my brother, she just had 2 children, that she had a policy at work. We didn't know the details of how much it was. And my mom passed unexpectedly. And so we had to go through, we found the checkbook and statements because we're trying to figure out, does she have additional insurance? Still, we never got resolved. She had some money in a 401k. We never really got to resolve. It wasn't a whole lot of money, but it was a little bit. But we never got to resolve because it wasn't, we were named beneficiaries. And then we was going to have to go through probate, but it wasn't enough to hire somebody to spend the money to get the money. And so you're right. But I remember we spent hours at the house, finding papers and going through boxes of papers and stuff and trying to figure out what she had. You mute, Sandy, if you're talking.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's rough. When you have to try to kind of figure things out, you may have some shreds of things here and there, but the process of trying to grieve a loss and then at the same token trying to handle business, it's a very hard clash. So I think giving yourself and your family a little bit of peace of mind is what we all should strive for.
Right.
Trying to make sure that we have certain things in place so that we don't have to go through that process of searching and finding, and it's already traumatizing losing someone suddenly, but then at the same token to now have to search through their things, and it would be so much more peaceful in mind to be able to know that I can pull a folder or a notebook or a binder or a file on a computer and be able to know, okay, these are the things I'm going to have to deal with. I can put that aside right now so that I can now deal with grieving. Whereas when you have to search for things and you're trying to grieve, you're feeling an urgency at that point, because what if you don't have funds to do a funeral? Now you have the scramble of the GoFundMe, or you're trying to ask family members to chip in, right? What if you don't have, an idea of what your mom wants or what your dad wants, how they want things done? It's a very hard thing to make decisions for someone. I personally want to be cremated.
Me too.
But a lot of folks don't believe in that, or they may have religious beliefs, or they may just personally not like the idea. But imagine cremating someone who that's not what their intention was. Or imagine, burying someone and spending a ton of money, casket and mausoleum and all these other things, and all they wanted to do was to be laid to rest, quietly tucked away, right? They didn't want all the flash and the flare. I've seen so many things with funerals these days. I mean, the exposing of bodies and, having bodies at receptions and all kinds of like craziness. And I'm like, is that what that person would have wanted for their, body to be treated in certain ways? It's just like, I think that's another part of this conversation of having your last wishes, is being able to, tell people what it is that you want. And in your will and other documents, you can do that. You can tell people, hey, I don't want to be buried, or hey, I want to be cremated. So I think it's a great thing to have, opportunity to speak of your last wishes through your documents like a will.
Yeah, you tickled me a little bit, saying, outlandish uh, people going away and what they have had, and like you said, what does that person would they would have wanted that?
Correct.
My wife
I'm
doesn't want.
always curious.
Yeah, my wife doesn't want to be cremated. I do, and my purpose is, babe, save money. You don't need to. I'm dead. I'm gone. You don't waste any money on me. The least expensive way where you have more of the money. And that's kind of my philosophy. But everybody don't have that same philosophy. And so,
Right.
but it goes back to, like you said, August is Make a Will month. Anyway, for those that are listening and tuning in, this is August is Make a Will month. This is the month that is set aside for people to focus on will and estate planning. This is Sandy and I third year of doing this event. Sandy has done an excellent job covering some things that she covered previously. If you can go back, you probably can find them on LinkedIn or reach out to me. We have recordings of those previous ones. But if you're watching on live, give us a hashtag live and tell us where you're from. If you got questions, drop some questions in the chat, or even after it's over, give us a hashtag and tell a replay and tell us where you're from. But also, if you have some questions, tag us and we'll get the questions. I'll make sure if I see it, Sandy gets the question and she can answer the question. Sandy, what have you seen in your experience? Have you ever had a case where someone had everything together and it was all planned out and it was together?
I've seen some situations where everything was together,
Mhm.
and I think the only problem that I've seen is that sometimes things are still not done according to your wishes,
Okay.
because let's say, for example, someone creates a document on their own
Mhm.
and they fail to include certain language. So while in part their wishes may be satisfied, there may be other things in their documents that don't align. So for example, years ago, I remember a situation where somebody had, they wanted to leave property to a specific person. The problem is the name that was listed was a very common name.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like, well, the person wasn't a family member. And we were trying to figure out, was the person a friend? Were they an extended family member? Were
Mhm.
they somebody that the person was in a relationship? So we had to try to figure out who this person was. And come to find out, we really couldn't find who this person was. And it was determined that, whoever that person was just couldn't be located. So maybe they had passed, or something
Mhm.
else. And so we had to resort to, changing course a bit, right? So now we had to look at, what the document said in the event that, this person couldn't be
Mhm.
found or whatever.
Mhm.
And it ended up, you know, the person's document did not really outline what happens if this person is not available. So now we had to resort to state law, and guess what had happened? It ended up transferring to the person's children, who the person had said, look, I'm not trying to, have anything go to my kids.
Okay.
But unfortunately, because they were doing things on their own and they were not covering certain things, it was a problematic situation. So whatever it is that they had ended up going to people that they didn't include in their document. They didn't
Right.
specifically exclude their kids, but they didn't include their kids. They were leaving whatever it was to someone who we couldn't figure out who the person was. Oh, my girl Tasha's on here. Let me see what Tasha says. Tasha says it's time we stopped using creating wills as an excuse for not preparing and leaving the burden on those we leave behind, but think it will come to fruition if it's done. I mean, it's something interesting to say that you know, we're preparing for a time that we won't be around, right?
Yeah.
It's a little weird concept that we're preparing for a time where we won't be around. But the reason that we're preparing is so that we can give our next person, right? if it's our spouse, if it's our children, we can give them some peace of mind and not leave them burdened with trying to figure all this stuff out, right? Leave them burdened with spending more money, leave them burdened with conflicts with siblings or conflicts with other family members. You are creating an opportunity for someone to be able to do things without stress and frustration.
Yeah.
That's an important reason to create a will. That's an important reason to plan and organize your affairs. So, I think that's an important point. Thank you for that, Tasha.
Yeah, thanks, Tasha. And I think, making sure your family have security and peace of mind if things happen. It goes back in the industry I'm in. The purpose of the life insurance is to make sure the family can have bury the person, and then they can continue the same lifestyle.
Absolutely.
If the budget deems it the same lifestyle in the event if they're not there. So, like I said, it's all about planning. It's kind of and what's the interesting part? You planning a lot of things when you're not going to be here anymore. And so sometimes some people say, "Well, I don't care. Throw me in a box," or "I don't have anything." And so it still creates a burden because we have to go by norms, traditions, and laws, and it can create a burden on those family members that are left.
Heard that with some celebrities that are being like, I already lived my life. I enjoyed my money. I don't care what happens like
Right.
after I go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a terrible thought.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I get why you feel that way, but you're creating some nonsense. Tasha likes your throw me in the box comment.
Right. And that's what some people say.
Right.
Hey, just throw me in a box,
But they don't realize that throwing them in a box is not something that you could just do.
Correct.
I get it if you want to be buried in the least complicated way as possible, but there's no such thing as just throwing somebody in a box and then burying them, unless you, God forbid, would bury them in your backyard. Like, that's insane.
Right. Yeah.
So
maybe
it's like
100 years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's like, there's an expense to this. And if you don't want to be, maintained in a coffin, then you might want to be cremated. But even that, there's an expense to that. It ain't cheap.
You're right.
It ain't as cheap as it used to be.
Right. Yeah. So true. So true. Sandy.
Oh, I got Tasha one more. What'd she say? Oh, I know. I said it on the life insurance side. Oh, I see it on the life insurance side. Well, you do life insurance too, Troy. So you see that on that side as well?
Yes. Yes. So Tasha offers life insurance.
Yeah, Tasha does life insurance. Yeah. She does some life insurance work. So she says she sees it on that side. Do you also experience that, Troy?
Yeah.
People are like, I just want to be thrown in a box. I'm not leaving no life insurance for nobody.
Right. Yeah. That, and they don't realize that, the importance is not for them, it's for the family, to, take care of it, even if it's at least leave something to cover the burial, so it won't be a burden, and so it's hard to get people to understand that we all are going to leave here, and we just need to make the preparations ahead of time to be able to ease the burden, on our family, and friends. So, Sandy, thank you again. Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. So what I would say is this. As we think about the importance of creating a will, August is National Make a Will Month. We want you to be thinking about some things that you can organize and put together. I encourage you before our next meetup and our last meetup, which is next week, I encourage you to think about putting some things together to organize your information. So think about the real estate that you own. Think about the bank accounts that you have. If you have other investments, if you have crypto, if you have stocks or bonds, if you have a 401k, an IRA, if you own a business, if you have any virtual assets like content creators, right? If you have any of those types of things, start to organize and figure out where you can put those things in a way where if someone needed to figure out what you have, they could easily access it. last year, I think I started talking about creating folders.
Yeah,
So
you
I
did.
think on our very last session, I'm going to give you some examples of how you can start to prepare some things yourself, to organize your information, maybe considering some fireproof document holders. Sometimes people just put their documents in a safe lock cabinet or something like that, but you may want to consider something that's fireproof and flood proof, and just organize your information. That is the first step in order for you to make a will. You
Yeah.
have to have your information organized so that whatever professional you choose to work with can kind of give you some guidance on, well, what do I need to do if I have a piece of property? What do I need to do if I have money in the bank? What if I have to do if I have a life insurance policy and I want to, carry that over to, the next generation and the next. So those are the things. Prepare your information and trust and believe you may be able to get your will done here in August, which is National Make a Will Month.
Awesome. Again, Sandy, thank you so much for sharing your insight and your wisdom. Remember those, if you're watching it on the replay, give us a hashtag replay and tell us where you're from. Also, please share this video with others. Sandy, how can they find you and connect with you?
So my YouTube channel has my details, so you can go to @SpectrumLaw on YouTube. That was probably the easiest way. You can also Google it, Spectrum Law. You should be able to find my information at Spectrum Law, Florida.
All right. Well, again, Sandy, thank you so much. Everybody, thank y'all for tuning in, watching, sharing. Tasha, thank you for jumping in and your comments. We'll see everybody next week, same time, same channel, the old saying, same time, same channel. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Tasha.